The President. Questions. Question 1, Dr. Tik Chi-yuen. President, last year, the number of suspected student suicide cases reported to the Education Bureau by primary and secondary schools in Hong Kong remained high, and even hit a record high in the past 5 years. In addition, self-administered questionnaires were collected from 330,000 primary and secondary school students attending the Student Health Service Centers of the DH in the 2022-23 school year, with results indicating that 1.3% of the students had attempted suicide in the past 12 months. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As the government implemented a 3-tier school-based emergency mechanism in all secondary schools in Hong Kong in December last year to address the problem of student suicide. How the Education Bureau assists schools in identifying at an early stage students with mental health needs and of the number of referral cases received so far by the off-campus support network team and the follow-up situations, whether it has assessed the effectiveness of these 2 tiers under the mechanism. 2. Of the number of students with severe mental health needs who were referred by school principals under the mechanism to receive psychiatric specialist services of the hospital authority in the past 6 months and the follow-up situations of such cases. And 3. Given the Education Bureau's call for active participation from primary and secondary schools in the 4 R's mental health charter to be launched in the next school year, to enhance students' mental health, of the number and percentage of schools signing up for joining the charter before the deadline last month. Secretary for Education. President, nurturing students with proper values and a positive attitude has all along been the objective of education, and leading a healthy lifestyle is one of the goals of school curriculum. The Education Bureau attaches great importance to the physical and psychological well-being of students. Through cross-departmental and cross-sectoral collaboration with the Health Bureau, Departments of Health, Social Welfare Departments, the Hong Kong Police Force and other NGOs, we provide support for schools, students and parents. With the efforts of all parties, we can build a more robust safety net for students. In consultation with the Health Bureau and the Social Welfare Department, my consolidated reply to the question raised by Dr. Tik Chi-yuen is as follows. Questions 1 and 2. In view of the upward trend of suspected student suicide cases in year 2023, the government has implemented the 3-tier school-based emergency mechanism in all secondary schools in Hong Kong from December 2023 to December 2024 through the cross-departmental collaboration of the Bureau, the Health Bureau, and the Social Welfare Department to provide support for students with higher risk. Under the mechanism, schools will give priority to caring for and counseling students with higher risk and will seek professional counseling or treatment services for them through the school's interdisciplinary team in the first tier. The EDB urges school personnel to refer to a resource handbook for schools, detecting, supporting, and making referral for students with suicidal behaviors, published by the EDB to preliminarily identify vulnerable students and pay attention to the warning signs. If necessary, schools may conduct a preliminary mental health screening for students with higher risk by using screening tools such as self-test station, depressive mood from the DH, and Kessler Psychological Distress Scale K10 from Shall We Talk. The interdisciplinary team, which consists of guidance masters or mistresses, guidance personnel, school social workers, and school-based educational psychologists in schools, will follow up on students with higher risk. School personnel are recommended to refer to the guidelines on how schools can help students with mental health problems, published by the EDB, to provide support to students as soon as possible. To strengthen school personnel's early identification of and support for students with suicidal tendencies, apart from providing guidelines and a 60-hour thematic course on gatekeeper training for teachers every year, the EDB also organized online gatekeeper training courses for primary and secondary schools in December last year. Some 1,000 school personnel enrolled for the online training course. In addition, the EDB organized more than 40 additional training courses and workshops early this year, with an enhanced focus on enriching school personnel's knowledge and skills in caring for students with mental health needs. The courses benefited about 2,200 school personnel. In the second tier, if the schools consider that they need to seek extra support subsequent to the identification and school-based intervention in the first-tier system, they may seek assistance from the off-campus support network, coordinated by the SWD. The SWD has engaged 5 NGOs to form the support network to provide extra support to schools. Upon receiving referrals, the support network team will contact the students concerned and arrange follow-up services, including emergency intervention services covering assessment, support, and counseling through individual, group, or online formats. It would also refer the students to other services, such as the Integrated Family Services, the Integrated Community Center for Mental Wellness, and the Integrated Children and Youth Services Center, according to students' individual needs. As of March this year, the support network team has received a total of 69 referral cases. Besides, in collaboration with the SWD, the support network team has visited about 150 secondary schools to organize mental health activities since February this year, with a view to enhancing students' awareness of mental health, their adaptability, and their awareness of help seeking. In the third tier of the mechanism, school principals may refer students with severe mental health needs to the psychiatric specialist services of the HA. After triage and screening, the HA will accord priority to urgent cases. Furthermore, the HA has set up a consultation hotline to provide professional advice for school principals. As of March this year, the HA's psychiatric specialist services received a total of 168 referrals and 75 telephone inquiries from school principals through the 3-tier mechanism. Among the referred cases, around 3% were Priority 1 or urgent cases, while some 40% were Priority 2 or semi-urgent cases. The remaining cases were either routine, stable cases or were cases already being followed up by the HA. Based on our communication with schools, with the concerted efforts of schools and various stakeholders, school personnel's awareness on students' mental health has enhanced in general. They are able to identify and support students with higher risk. The operations of the second tier and the third tier of the mechanism are smooth, providing timely and appropriate counseling and treatment to students in need. The government will closely monitor the operation of the 3-tier mechanism and engage a consultant to evaluate its effectiveness. 3. The EDB launched the 4 R's Mental Health Charter in April this year and invited all public sector and direct subsidy scheme or DSS schools in Hong Kong to join. The 4 R's cover 4 important elements in fostering students' mental health, namely rest, relaxation, relationship, and resilience. We hope that the stakeholders' awareness on mental health will be enhanced and they will work together and take actions through the promotion of 4 R's Charter. Schools participating in the 4 R's Charter are required to set practical and feasible goals and to take concrete actions to promote students' physical and psychological well-being. Schools joining the Charter must also pledge to join the Mental Health Workplace Charter, jointly implemented by the DH, the Labour Department, and the Occupational Safety and Health Council, as well as the whole school health program launched by the DH, so as to carry on with their school-based health promotion efforts in a more comprehensive manner. The EDB has also been engaging NGOs as partner organizations of the Charter to provide schools with additional services, activities, and courses to enhance students' mental health. As of the 31st of May this year, some 340 primary and secondary schools applied to join, accounting for 34% of all public sector schools and DSS schools in Hong Kong. We will continue to encourage more schools to join the Charter so as to cultivate a healthy environment that is conducive to their growth. We will continue to work with various stakeholders to promote mental health in schools in a more comprehensive manner, jointly establish a support network, and create a caring culture so as to promote students' physical and psychological well-being. Thank you, President. Dr. Dick. Thank you, President. First of all, I agree with the Education Bureau's past efforts on enhancing students' mental wellness. Many programs were designed for that purpose. Now, I invite the Secretary and the departments to do more in this regard. We need to safeguard students' lives. They are our future. From a crisis management perspective, I think early identification and intervention is key. When we can identify all high-risk students and provide them with help, I believe that there will be a drastic decrease in number of suicide cases. Now, in the reply, the Education Bureau said guidelines were provided to help teachers identify risky students. But I think we need to develop the safety net in a more systematic approach. Will the government consider doing it in a systematic manner, say, for example, through questionnaires and class teachers' session? Schools can identify high-risk students more easily, and a list can be compiled so that these high-risk students can be referred to NGOs and other professionals. This is a more robust arrangement. Secretary. Thank you, President. We are willing to consider every means which may be able to help improve students' mental well-being. At the same time, we will reduce the risk factors. So that's why we have been adopting the approach of early identification and intervention. Now, as mentioned in the reply, according to the survey, schools are making use of the questionnaires, engaging the mental well-being of their students. Now, under the three-tier mechanism, class teachers and subject teachers and disciplinary teachers are able to notice the warning signs and intervene appropriately. When necessary, school-based educational psychologists and school social workers would also provide help. So we are adopting a whole school approach in helping students. Now, under the 4R Mental Health Charter, we will be able to do that in a more systematic manner. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, President. And concerning students' mental health issues, I agree that the government has done a lot. However, I don't think the figures in Tier 2 and Tier 3 are reasonable. For Tier 2, 80 to 90% will be caught in the second tier. According to school principals and teachers, sometimes they would call the hospital directly under the third tier system because they think it is similar to school-based help. Now, the three-tier system is good. However, I think we should improve the human resources for the second tier. For example, counseling, human resources, and also arts and music therapists, and so on, so that school principals would not jump to the third tier at once. Secretary, concerning the number of cases in the second and the third tiers, in schools, when principals and teachers identify students with mental health needs, they would be dealing with the cases immediately in schools. So if the number of students needing care exceeds their capacity, the schools would seek help in the third tier. Now, for the third tier, the cases are more serious and they require psychiatric services from the HA. So the purposes of the two tiers are different. Whether we can provide more resources to the second tier. Well, actually, we have taken the initiative to approach some 150 schools to organize activities under the second tier. Of course, we may consider widening the scope of services, for example, arts and music therapies. Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you, President. I was told by someone who has 3 children. Every year, before the start of the academic year, they need to pay $20 to join the student health service schemes. Now, the appointments are usually arranged during weekdays. It is after school hours, but both parents are working, so they need to take leaves from their companies to take their children to the appointments. But sometimes they can't do that, and the $20 have gone to waste. Now, according to the audit report in 2023, the attendance rate for the student health service is just 30 to 70% since it starts. Now, will the government consider changing the arrangement so that it is the schools which arrange for the appointments so as to enhance the participation rate of the scheme? If so, how would the government do that? If not, why not? This is unrelated to the main question. The question is on mental health of students. Can the secretary provide a reply? We will convey the message to the relevant department. And whether schools can take the role of coordinating appointments. Now, usually for vaccination and other appointments, if it is feasible, technically, schools would be willing to coordinate the appointments. Now, attendance of appointment is important because it is crucial to students' health. Parents must attend the appointment as well, so we will talk to schools. Mr. Hok-fung. Thank you, President. I support the 4 Hours Mental Health Charter in the second half of the year. It is easy for schools to sign up, but the sustainability or the duration of the charter will decide whether the charter is a success. Now, in secondary schools, there is a culture of rote learning and drilling, and the system is highly competitive. So on this issue, will the government consider reforming the educational system to enhance the mental wellness and sense of happiness of students? Secretary. Thank you, President. Concerning the culture of drilling and competitiveness in schools, we are enhancing the system in terms of enhancing assignments and the examination system. Over the past few years, we have been providing more room for students to relax. Now, we stress that schools must be equipped with an appropriate assessment policy and home assignment policies. The strategy should be adjusted according to individual needs. At the same time, we have increased the number of flexible lesson hours in primary schools to provide counseling to students in need. We believe that would be helpful in caring for individual learning needs. In terms of examination stress and the workload from examination, we have enhanced the examination system as well. Besides requiring schools to have its own school-based assessment policy, we are also providing multiple pathways for post-DSE students. Whether they choose to pursue further study or join the labor market, we are offering them help from a young age. We also encourage VPAT so that each student can pursue a career that they are interested in. So that is what we have been doing in the past. Now, to ensure that there is overall mental well-being in schools, we need an all-hands-on-deck approach from all stakeholders in society to be the gatekeeper. Mr. Dennis Leung, President, according to paragraph 2 of the main reply, under the third tier, there were 168 referral cases and 75 telephone inquiries from school principals, altogether 243. 40% of these cases were priority 2 or semi-urgent cases. That translates into 96 students. Urgent cases accounted for 3%, that is 8 students. We have no representatives from the HA today to explain to us what these cases are about. So if the referral situation is not ideal, and if there is insufficient help given by the HA, does the Education Bureau have the resources to help these youngsters at risk? Secretary, for cases referred to the HA, the students would be receiving psychiatric specialist services from the HA. Now, treatments for mental illnesses or any disease at all, the results or the effects will not be seen in a short period of time. Now, counselors in schools and also class teachers involved in the cases would help to observe the changes in the students. But we must understand that treatment takes time. And we can't cure the students overnight.
Question to Mr. Tony TSE. Thank you, President. Some members of the innovation and technology sector and the real estate sector have pointed to a severe shortage of properties in Hong Kong suitable for hosting higher-tier data centers, including those for supercomputing centers supporting the development of artificial intelligence, thereby undermining the competitiveness and future development of the relevant industries. In this connection, will the government inform this council, first, whether it has assessed the demand for and supply of properties available for use as data center or supercomputing centers, if so, of the details, and the measures put in place to ensure adequate supply in the market, if not, the reasons for that. Second, while the government introduced measures in 2012 to encourage the partial conversion of industrial buildings for data center use, some members of the industry argue that existing industrial buildings are simply not fit for conversion into higher-tier data centers. Given this, whether the government will review the relevant measures and introduce new ones to encourage the demolition and wholesale redevelopment of industrial buildings into data centers or supercomputing centers. And third, as there are views that some building laws and regulations, as well as planning standards, such as requirements about the height and load bearing of stories, fire safety, security, sewage disposal, as well as the number of parking spaces, lift and toilets, may be obsolete for properties to be used as data centers or supercomputing centers. Whether the authorities have reviewed the relevant laws and regulations, as well as standards, if so, of the outcome. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, data centers are a key piece of infrastructure to drive the digital economy and technology innovation. To promote the development of data centers in Hong Kong, the Office of the Government Chief Information Officer set up the Data Center Facilitation Unit in 2011 to provide one-stop support services to enterprises interested in developing data centers in Hong Kong. The government has also introduced concessionary land-related measures since 2012 to encourage the conversion of industrial buildings or IBs and the use of industrial lots for data center use. In consultation with the Development Bureau, I give my reply to Mr. Tony TSE's question as follows. First, the Hong Kong Innovation and Technology Development Blueprint promulgated in 2022 proposed speeding up the development of new digital infrastructure, encompassing a comprehensive assessment on the planning and development of data centers in Hong Kong. According to the OGCIO's estimation, there was about 800,000 square meters of data center floor area in 2022, and the available data center floor area was expected to increase by over 700,000 square meters by 2026. Currently, there is about 970,000 square meters of data center floor area, with the supply mainly coming from the conversion of parts of existing IBs, redevelopment of the entire IBs, land sold through the land sale program that can be used for information technology and telecommunications industries, and and land transactions on the market. In 2023, the OJCIO also surveyed data center operators who indicated a short to medium term demand for data center floor area of approximately 300,000 square meters. Based on the current estimation, together with the existing supply, the total floor area of data centers in Hong Kong will reach 1.5 million square meters by 2026, which should be able to meet the short to medium term demand. On supercomputing data facilities, the feasibility study on the establishment of Artificial Intelligence Supercomputing Center done by a consultant commissioned by the OJCIO in 2023 estimated that the total computing capacity of supercomputing centers, that is, the supply of computing power of local universities and research centers, etc., excluding the computing power for individual research projects not to be opened up for use, to be around 60 petaflops. At that time, the consultant also forecasted that the short to medium term local demand for supercomputing power would be around 3,000 pflops. Cyberport is preparing for the establishment of the AISC, the first phase of which is expected to commence operation in the second half of this year at the earliest. The AISC is expected to be able to provide a computing power of 3,000 pflops in early 2026 at the earliest, which should broadly meet the estimated demand for supercomputing services in the short to medium term. The government will continue to identify suitable sites for data centers and supercomputing centers. Potential land sources include the Santin Technopole, Laofaoshan area, and Sandy Ridge in the northern metropolis. Taking into account the actual demand and supply, as well as other factors, the market can also make use of the existing concessionary measures and flexibly explore the conversion of suitable sites or premises into data-related facilities for different operational needs of various scale, tiers, and design. Upon the commissioning of Cyberport's AISC, the government will also examine ways to further meet Hong Kong's medium to long-term demand for advanced computing power facilities. On the second and third part of the question, the government is committed to promoting the growth of data centers in Hong Kong by adopting various measures. Since 2012, the government has introduced two concessionary land measures, namely the exemption of wafer fees for repurposing parts of IBs as data centers, or what we call the waiver application, and assessing the land premium for the data center part on the basis of high-tier data center use and the actual development intensity during lease modification of industrial lots, or lease modification applications. The government also, through the relaxation of the maximum permissible plot ratio by up to 20%, encourages the redevelopment of eligible old IBs for different uses, including data center as well as other IT and telecoms uses. As at mid-May 2024, a total of 44 waiver applications for converting the IB floor space into data center had been approved. Around 70% of these applications involved high-tier data centers. Moreover, 5 lease modification applications for redevelopment on industrial lots as high-tier data centers were approved. These applications are estimated to provide about 300,000 square meters of total floor area for data centers, including over 240,000 square meters for high-tier data center use. These results show that the current concessionary measures have been effective in encouraging the industry to utilize IB spaces for promoting the growth of data centers, including those at higher tiers. The government has also disposed of 2 sites in 2013 and 2018, respectively, in Tung-kwok that could be turned into high-tier data centers. Moreover, industrial and commercial sites disposed of in recent years can also accommodate a wide range of uses, including data centers. On the setting up or construction of data centers, the current applicable planning and building construction regulations do not impose requirements higher than or different from those for other general industrial and commercial uses. Whether particular premises or sites are fit for conversion into data centers generally depends on the scale of the facility required by the developer and data center operator. On the specific development parameters, design, technical standards of data centers, including floor height, loading, power supply, and backup generation facilities, cooling, other factors, the industry in general follows international standards. To help the industry take forward various projects, the OGCIO has its data center facilitation unit. We also keep a close eye on the market development and feedback from the industry and review the support measures from time to time. Mr. Tony TSE. President, to build and run a high-tier data center, there are challenges: high land rent, high construction costs, and high electricity tariffs. To facilitate the building of these centers, government assistance matters, and also government coordination is also crucial. Now, the main reply mentions work on this front. But let's look at an example. 12 years ago, back in 2012, my question for the Secretary is that will you work with the Environment and Ecology Bureau in talking to the two power companies to ensure we have enough and steady power supply to support the building of more high-tier data centers? Secretary. President, I thank Mr. TSE for his suggestion. Indeed, the OGCIO's facilitation unit will talk to different departments. We will also listen to the feedback from the industry to provide more facilitation measures to drive the development of data centers. Power supply is key to data centers. We need steady, reliable power supply. We know that the EEB also talks to the two power companies when appropriate about the scheme of control agreements on the future operation of the power market. We will also work with the EEB on rolling out more facilitation measures for data centers. Thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong. President, data centers are core to the development of a digital economy. But you cannot have a cost-effective data center just everywhere. I agree with Mr. Tony TSE that we are confronted with challenges in land cost, construction cost, and power costs in Hong Kong. In the mainland, they have enough data centers and computing power. The mainland also offers much cheaper power. Let's look at the Pearl River Delta region in Guizhou. They have their own geographical conditions and they have their own strategy. They have the richest data center resources. They also offer the cheapest power in Guizhou. So will we consider finding spots, specific data centers in Guizhou? Can we set up a base of data centers in the mainland so that we can have low cost and high efficiency sites for data storage and also supercomputing? Secretary. Data centers, along with the supercomputing centers to be built, those centers will be vital parts of the infrastructure for Hong Kong's digital economy. Data centers and supercomputing centers are also key platforms for us to draw I&T talent and firms to Hong Kong from overseas. That will also help us enhance our research and development. So we will make good use of our own strengths. And at the same time, we will also talk to the mainland, as Dr. Hong suggested, in collaboration opportunities over data and artificial intelligence. This can help us further our hub as a data center. Ms. Maggie Chen. Thank you. The main question says that there are requirements about the floor height, bearing, air conditioning, and security for data centers. And those are different from requirements for general industrial buildings. So will the government look into our current building regulations so that we can have up-to-date guidelines for data centers? Secretary. Thank you. On planning and building regulations, we do not impose more stringent requirements for data centers. On the contrary, we provide flexibility. Now, for data centers, they may require more headroom and other factors. In approving the plans for data centers, we approved more than 10 such building plans over the past 5 years. We take a flexible and pragmatic approach. We understand that data centers will require more headroom. We accept 7 meters. If the data centers need more headroom, they can talk to the housing department. At the buildings department, there's a mechanism for pre-application inquiries so that we can take this pragmatic and flexible approach to address the different needs from the industry. So on rules and planning, we provide enough flexibility for data centers. Mr. Duncan Chiu. Thank you, President. Now, there will be a surge in the data to be processed for our INT development. So we need data centers. Now, this question turns on high-tier data centers. We did not distinguish between different tiers of data centers. We can take a single floor in a building for a data center. We can have a whole new building for data centers. But is the government aware that for the future, the next generation high-tier data centers will require vastly different computing power and facilities and software from the past? We will need something entirely new. For the future data centers, they will need much more than what we have now. And we will also need more power, and there will be more power savings with greater efficiency because of the new technologies. So for future data centers, shouldn't we be having different tiers? So when we build new data centers, we should be setting aside new land instead of just looking at the more than 1 million square meters of floor space and assume that would be good enough. We should be making distinguish between tiers. There should be a distinction. Who will take the question, please? We want to turn Hong Kong into a hub for data centers in Asia Pacific. Now we have tiers 1 to 4. We will also have supercomputing centers. There may be new generations of centers with greater demand for computing power. So on land use planning for data centers, we have to consider factors such as computing power and other forms of infrastructure. Those factors will be taken into account. Mr. Chen Kim-po. Thank you, President. The main reply points out in paragraph 1 that when we look at the floor area, there will be 1.5 million square meters in floor area in 2026. Supercomputing centers will require a huge amount of power. Another member mentioned we need steady power supply. The largest expense for data centers is power tariffs. Can we talk to power companies for dedicated power supply? So can we get concessionary power tariffs for data centers? Or can we talk to the mainland for dedicated power supply? That way we can offer lower power tariffs to support data centers. Secretary. As the member pointed out, power is crucial to data centers. Power matters for the operating expenditure for data centers. There are different sizes of data centers on the market. Those centers want to achieve greater energy efficiency. Different technologies can help achieve energy savings to boost power efficiency. The member referred to power and other factors. Our data center facilitation unit will talk to the industry when appropriate. the unit will also talk to different departments and public bodies about measures to help the industry to promote data centers. Thank you, President. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, President. My question is similar to Mr. Chen Kin-po's. My question also has to do with power. Now, for the current or future generations of supercomputing centers, studies show in the next 3 years, we will need twice as much power. Data centers around the world will take up so much power that it will be equivalent to the power consumption of Japan as a country. So do we have a mechanism to assess the power supply of old industrial buildings? Can we tell whether those old industrial buildings have enough power to support those data centers, which are so power hungry? Secretary. Now, when we convert old industrial buildings for data centers, those tend to happen in developed areas. We believe data center operators will look at the industrial buildings. They will find the right industrial buildings for their data centers. With different kinds of requirements, our facilitation unit will help the data center operators to talk to different departments. The member wished to remind us to think ahead about the different studies. The facilitation unit will also consider those factors. Professor William Wong. Thank you, President. My question also has to do with power supply. We have a target. We want to halve our carbon emission by 2035. That is half the level back in 2005. So in the government's work, are there ways to reduce our carbon emission at the same time? Secretary. Decarbonization and carbon neutrality are also broad directions of government policies. The government encourages data centers to save energy and boost energy efficiency. We have been promoting good practices. Starting from 2016, we have asked operators to submit energy-saving plans along with their conversion plans. We encourage operators to follow the practice guides for green data centers.
Question 3, Mr. Chen Hok-fung. President, it has been reported that the peak season of seasonal influenza has been persisting. Some experts in respiratory medicine have predicted that Hong Kong's winter and summer influenza seasons may be linking up and have called on high-risk cohorts to receive influenza vaccine as soon as possible. In this connection, will the government inform this council of the numbers of severe cases and fatalities involving children infected with influenza, as well as the death rates in the past 3 years, and whether these children have received influenza vaccine, together with a breakdown by age, that is age under 3, between 3 and 5, between 6 and 8, and between 9 and 11. Second, it has been reported that some experts have pointed out that children born during the COVID-19 epidemic are less resistant to influenza viruses and have called on the parents concerned to get their children vaccinated against influenza as soon as possible, and that the types of vaccines required for infants and children are recommended under the government's Hong Kong Childhood Immunization Program. Whether the government will include influenza vaccines in the program, if so, of the timetable. And third, it has been reported that some medical doctors have pointed out that with global warming, the chances of new endemic diseases raging the world will be increasingly higher. Whether the government has conducted drills on a regular basis in order to cope with an extreme scenario of an influenza outbreak similar to the COVID-19 epidemic, if so, of the details. Secretary for Health. President, Hong Kong has entered the influenza season since January this year, and the government has been staying vigilant and has implemented a series of measures in respect of virus surveillance, protection of high-risk groups, vaccination, and service demand. The government has also been reminding the public to have better personal protection against influenza. For instance, the Center for Health Protection and the Hospital Authority have held press conferences jointly in January and April, and the HA also held press conferences in February to explain the measures to respond to the service surge of public hospitals. Further to the briefing to the panel on health services in October last year, the government will report to the panel on health services on the latest situation next Friday, which is June 14th. Prevention is better than cure. The government has been encouraging and facilitating the public in receiving influenza vaccination. With a joint effort from relevant parties in 2023 to 24, a total of more than 1.85 million doses of influenza vaccines were administered under all the programs, representing an increase of 20% when compared with the 2022 to 23 season, which is a record high. Influenza viruses are constantly changing. The World Health Organization normally announces in February or March each year the proposed strains for influenza vaccines to be used in the Northern Hemisphere to prepare for the influenza season at the end of the year. After the announcement of strain recommendation, the manufacturers can start preparing for the production of vaccines for arranging the vaccination in the Northern Hemisphere at the end of the year. The Hong Kong SAR government usually, upon availability of vaccines for the new season, will begin the seasonal influenza vaccination programs, and the programs will usually end around the July and August upon the expiry of the vaccines. Early vaccination, October is the best timing. October is the most ideal timing for receiving vaccination to provide effective protection against the strains for influenza predicted by the WHO and prepare for the possible winter or summer influenza seasons in one go. With the transit of the dominating virus strain from the earlier Influenza A H3 to the recent H1, the duration of the current influenza season has been prolonged. Members of the public who have not received this vaccine can still get vaccinated before the expiry of the influenza vaccine, which is before July or August. Nonetheless, around October this year will be the new season, and thus members of the public should take the latest vaccine after the launch of the new program for optimal protection. In consultation with the Department of Health, the consolidated reply to the question raised by Mr. Chen Hok-fung is as follows. Information on severe pediatric influenza-associated complication or death cases is in the annex. Over the past 3 years, especially before early 2023, we have been wearing masks, and therefore seasonal influenza figures remain at low levels, and therefore death cases from 2020 to 2022 was basically zero. In our annex, we provided with figures pre-COVID so that members could have a better reference. According to the data, number of severe cases in the first half of 2024 is comparable to the first half year of the figures in the pre-COVID period. Most of the severe or fatal cases are those who did not receive the influenza vaccine. In the first half of 2026, out of 26 serious cases, 20 of them did not receive any vaccine. And this proves the importance of taking the vaccine. The Hong Kong Childhood Immunization Program targets 12 diseases. Upon completion of vaccination, long-term immunity can be provided, and some of them are actually lifelong immunity. So these are different from the seasonal influenza vaccines. SIVs are required each season and not targeted only for children. Even adults should take the seasonal influenza vaccine. The Scientific Committee on Vaccine Preventable Diseases hold regular meetings and gives science-based advice and recommendations to the CHP when necessary. Every year, the Scientific Committee will examine the scientific evidence on the seasonal influenza vaccine and the local and neighboring epidemiology of seasonal influenza in this season. Currently, children and adolescents aged 6 months to under 18 years are included in the priority groups. The government has been providing the vaccine under the government vaccination program and the vaccination subsidy scheme. Eligible children and adolescents can receive free or subsidized SIV in public or private clinics. Moreover, the government also provides influenza vaccination to eligible students through the school outreach programs. This year, territory-wide, around 70% of secondary schools, 95% of primary schools, and around 80% of kindergartens and child care centers enrolled in the outreach programs. Although SIV is not part of the children immunization program, the Department of Health would continue to promote this to parents of infants and young children through its service clinics. In 2023 to 24, more than 530,000 doses of SIV were administered for children and adolescents, reaching a record high and an increase of about 37% comparing with the same period of last year. Lastly, in response to major outbreaks of communicable diseases, the government has always been working towards reducing risk of human infection. We conduct different public health exercises and drills. Public health exercises cover different scenarios, including avian influenza, novel influenza, and novel disease. The latest exercise was conducted in November 2023, codenamed Exercise Pre-Night, which included a tabletop exercise and a ground movement exercise to mainly test the preparedness of government departments in handling imported cases, local transmission, and also tested the government's response and arrangement of large-scale evacuation operation. The CHP also proactively participates in exercises co-organized by health authorities of our counterparts. Thank you. Mr. Chan Hok-fung. Thank you. According to the Secretary, serious and fatal cases are largely reduced when vaccine has been taken. But then in a news release on June 3rd, only 9% of some of the children have taken the vaccine, and 90% of them have taken the vaccine. So do we actually have a KPI? Because Macau actually has quite a high vaccination rate. Can we ensure that children be better protected with vaccines? Secretary, thank you. We cannot directly compare the vaccination figures because we are talking about different target groups. Our target, of course, is to reach high vaccination rate, and we consider this at the discretion of schools because we rely on the schools to reach out to students, and parents must also accept such vaccines. All the primary and secondary students or kindergartens can join in our programs. We continue to promote the vaccination program, and every time we begin a new vaccination season, the EDB and we will also promote this to parents and schools. As I explained earlier, the most optimal time to take the vaccine is at the beginning of the season, which is when supply of the vaccines become available, which is October of each year. So children, adolescents, and adults should take the vaccine in October as soon as possible. Ms. Chen Ho-yen. Thank you, President. Most ideal way to prevent influenza is to take the vaccine. So parents really should not hesitate. If you have not yet taken the vaccine, remember to take it in October. In the first half of the year, 4 children have died due to influenza, and there have been a few hundred fatal cases in adults as well. Even if it is not life-threatening, many people go to public hospitals during influenza season, and that has put a lot of pressure on public hospital services as well. I'd like to ask the administration whether during influenza peak season, other than calling upon people to take vaccines, would you consider to provide mobile stations or mobile vehicles in hospitals or near hospitals to try to provide vaccines to more people? Secretary, thank you, Ms. Chen, for your question. As I have explained, the government provides different programs in vaccination, including free vaccine programs. All the private clinics would provide subsidized vaccines. We also provide outreach services to elderly homes or to schools, but currently we do not have plans to set up mobile vehicles to provide vaccines. We even provide outreach programs to homes as well. We, of course, are very concerned with the pressure on public hospitals. I'm sure you've all noticed that every time before a long holiday, when it is during influenza peak season, we will prepare well in advance and through the media let the public know of our measures and arrangements. We encourage the public not to visit public hospitals under the HA during long holidays. When they see signs of influenza, we would add in more outpatient services, and we work with private clinics or family doctors to encourage them to work during holidays. We would also publish a list of practitioners who work during holidays so that members of the public will know where they can go to seek medical advice. Dr. Chow Man Kong, thank you. I see that in the response, the government continues to encourage parents and children to take influenza vaccine. I want to say, however, that actually COVID is very similar to influenza. And we see that from the figures given by the DH, there are about 1,000 cases of COVID during the season as well. So I think that we must also make sure that we ensure that COVID would not make a comeback as well. Currently, those aged under 18 take the HPV vaccine, and at private doctors, some of them are afraid that there would be a risk for those under 18, and so vaccines would not be given to them. So would it actually also include those under 18 to be the priority group as well, so that they can also take the XBB vaccine, because many people actually cannot differentiate between influenza or COVID. And we do have availability in our warehouses right now. We should not actually waste them and put them to good use and give these vaccines to those under 18 as well. Secretary, thank you. Well, vaccines can actually help prevent fatalities. For those who were affected with COVID or have taken COVID vaccine for more than 6 months and would encourage them to take a booster, we have mRNA and XBB vaccines available for the high-risk groups. And the next step for the COVID vaccine, in accordance with the new guidelines given by the WHO, will probably be changed. At the moment, the target groups remain the same. Mr. Lai Tung-kwok. Thank you, President. Recently, we've seen many pediatric experts saying on social media or media that our school children actually do not have a high vaccination rate for influenza because they are afraid of receiving injections because of pain. So would you consider vaccines that are not injected? I don't know what the reasons are, but it seems that we do not have such kind of other alternatives. Could you actually have the nasal spray so that young people can actually be more acceptable towards this influenza vaccine, because many of them do not like needles? They might be more acceptable to nasal spray as well. Thank you. Secretary, this kind of nasal vaccine is available, and currently it's because of demand being low, not because of low availability. Actually, parents do not really request the nasal vaccine. Every year before the season, we would conduct a survey at schools to see which vaccine the schools prefer. We of course take into consideration the demand, and based on the statistics and figures, only 1/4 of the kindergartens request a nasal vaccine. In primary and secondary schools, the acceptance rate is even lower. For primary schools, only 9% of them requested the nasal and vaccine, and in secondary schools, only a very low rate of 7%. Actually, these two vaccines differ. The school and the administrator would usually only pick one vaccine. They will not provide two options for the children because it might become very confusing and might lead to serious cases. There is a risk there. So the schools can only pick one option out of the two. The majority of primary and secondary schools only pick the traditional vaccine. Only a small number of kindergartens, 1/4 of the kindergartens, pick the nasal spray. In 2023, we purchased about 22,000 nasal vaccines, but only used 17,400. So that means there are 5,700 that were available yet gone to waste. So we actually had to waste 22.7%. for traditional vaccines, the waste is only 3.1%. It's not a problem of demand and not a problem of supply. It's a matter of demand.
Question 4, Mr. Adrian HO. Thank you, President. There are views pointing out that the recent changes in the consumption pattern of members of the public and inbound tourists have posed a great challenge to the retail industry in Hong Kong. A number of shopping malls have seen business closures and surrender of tenancies. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it has plans to introduce measures such as rent concessions for tenants operating in its properties, including public markets and cooked food centres, and to discuss with operators of private shopping malls the provision of lease incentives for existing tenants to renew their tenancies and attracting new tenants so as to help increase the occupancy rate and tenancy renewal rate, thereby maintaining a favourable retail market situation. 2, as it is learnt that the revitalized central market is operated well, attracting more than 26 million visitors in 2 years while providing business space for street shop food vendors, local brands and small shops with unique characteristics and so on, whether the authorities have plans to draw on the relevant experience and use public markets or shopping malls with fewer visitors and vacant stores or shops as pilot projects for revitalization, coupled with effective promotional efforts to attract patronage by members of the public and tourists from the mainland and overseas. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3, of the current plans of the relevant government departments to provide support to Hong Kong's small and medium retailers to help them tide over the current retail downturn, and to extend the level of support provided by the Anti-Epidemic Fund to small and medium enterprises during the epidemic. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. President, Hong Kong's economy has been recovering steadily in the past year. In the first quarter of this year, the real gross domestic product grew by 2.7% over the preceding year, marking the 5th consecutive quarter of growth. Some recent data show that the economic performance remains positive in general, including the increase in the number of inbound visitors and the continuous improvement in the exports of goods. The forecast of economic growth for 2024 is maintained at 2.5% to 3.5%. As for the total retail sales, the data of the Census and Statistics Department reflect that there was an increase of 16.2% in 2023 as compared with 2022, from around $350 billion to around $407 billion. Along with the rise in employment earnings, the recent stabilization of asset markets, and the further revival in inbound tourism, with the number of visitors expected to increase by 35% to 46 million in 2024 as compared with that in 2023, coupled with the government's continued efforts in promoting mega-event economy and stimulating consumption sentiment, and the central government's further enhancement to the individual visit scheme by extending its scope from 49 to 59 cities to cover all provincial capitals in the country, the local retail sector is expected to benefit directly. Having consulted the Environment and Ecology Bureau and the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau, the consolidated reply to the 3 parts of the question is as follows. The government does not compile statistics on the leasing situation of private shops. According to the latest data released by a real estate services organization, the street shop vacancy rate has improved from 18.3% in the 3rd quarter of 2020 to 6.6% in the 1st quarter of 2024. The vacancy rate in some of the core districts such as Causeway Bay and Tsim Sha Tsui was even lower than 6.6%. Government properties are managed by different policy bureaux and departments and are rented out in accordance with the relevant policies, such as through open rental bids. For public markets and cooked food centres being part of government properties, the government currently does not have any plan to introduce rental concession measure. As regards the leasing situation of shops in the private market, the government is of the view that it should be market-driven, allowing private organizations to make adjustments having regard to factors such as the business operating environment, market conditions, location and vacancy rate of shops, etc. In recent years, the consumption pattern of residents and inbound visitors keeps changing, posing challenges to small and medium enterprises (SMEs) in the retail sector. The government has been providing assistance to SMEs, including those in the retail sector, having regard to the economic situation and the needs of the trade, with a view to helping them cope with liquidity shortage and encouraging them to enhance their competitiveness and develop more diversified markets. To assist enterprises hard hit by the epidemic in coping with cash flow problems, the government launched in April 2020 the special 100% guarantee product under the SME Financing Guarantee Scheme (SFGS) to provide low-interest concessionary loans to SMEs. As at the end of March 2024, a total of nearly $19 billion of loans has been approved under the SFGS for SMEs in the retail sector, benefiting over 6,000 enterprises and nearly 53,000 employees. In view of the ongoing challenges faced by SMEs, the government extends in this year's budget the application period for the 80% and 90% guarantee products under the SFGS for 2 years to end March 2026, so as to help more SMEs, including those in the retail sector, in coping with cash flow problems. At the same time, the government has also been actively supporting SMEs to carry out promotion activities and develop their businesses. Among others, the SME Export Marketing Fund (EMF) provides funding support for SMEs to participate in export promotion activities to expand their markets outside Hong Kong. The funding scope has been expanded following the implementation of the special measure from the 30th of April 2021 to the 30th of June 2026 to cover large-scale exhibitions and online exhibitions targeting the local market. As at end April 2024, EMF has approved more than 31,400 applications from the wholesale and retail sector, benefiting over 6,800 enterprises and involving a total funding of $700 million. In addition, the government has allocated funding to launch the Digital Transformation Support Pilot Program, under which subsidies will be provided on a one-to-one matching basis to assist SMEs in retail and food and beverage industries in applying e-payment and other ready-to-use basic digital solutions so as to expedite their digital transformation. The above-mentioned measures should help alleviate the operating pressure on the retail sector and help the sector further develop businesses. As Hong Kong's economy is recovering and the number of inbound visitors is increasing, the local retail sector will be given a greater impetus of recovery. The government will continue to closely monitor the situation and assist SMEs in riding out the storm, having regard to the situation. Thank you. Mr. Adrian HO. Well, we need to help small businesses survive. Now, shops don't have diversity. There is a high degree of duplication. We need to deal with that. So if we provide more leisure activities, that will help to bring more foot traffic to shopping malls. So is the government considering various efforts? For example, in commercial properties with large high vacancy rate, there should be more family events. There should also be pilot schemes to encourage private shopping malls to follow suit. Thank Secretary. Well, I'd like to invite the Undersecretary for Environment and Ecology to take this question. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. Yes, on markets and cooked food stores, cooked food markets. Now we have new projects, for example, the Kutong Market, Changkwano Market, or of course, we have also modernized other markets such as the Aberdeen Market. In these new markets, we have included the place-making element. So apart from being a place selling fresh food provisions, is also a gathering point for people to come to the markets that will bring more foot traffic to the markets. In future, where the opportunity arises, we will consider such measures as appropriate. Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, President. I'm grateful to the administration for giving various fund assistance to the retail sector during the tough times, and then you're also promoting mega economy events. With the latest events, I hope that will bring more visitors to Hong Kong and drive up business for the retail sector. But then in April, we've seen a drop of business turnover for the retail sector by some 40%. It's the largest drop for some time. Well, there are many reasons, but how can we help them? I think most importantly is about rent, apart from what the government has been doing. Now, of course, in the private market, we should let market forces determine the fair market value. But then, say, there are many shops in public markets, so I think the government should really take up discussion with the lessees about the markets and shopping center situation. While last week in an oral reply, the administration said it has no plan to renegotiate rent, but then maybe, if there are too many vacant shops in a shopping center, it's hard to revitalize the center. Well, Secretary, this is not a question for you, but do you have anything to say in reply? Thank you, President. Thank you, Member, for the question. For government properties in public markets or in public housing estates, there is a different policy bureau in charge of that. I will convey the members' questions to the relevant policy bureau, and then a reply will be given to you. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong. Now, there's development of e-commerce. We have an aging population, and then there are other factors such as neighboring economies and so on that will affect the business of the retail sector. Now, if we just provide loans or there are other measures mentioned in the main reply, they are not enough to help the retail sector to come out of its plight. So I wonder if the administration will consider what other economies are doing. Can we consider the way forward for the retail sector, the challenges faced by the retail sector, so that there will be more scientific recommendations on how to revive the retail sector? Secretary, well, the retail sector has raised various issues with us. And together with Mr. Chiu and the retail trade associations, we are organizing meetings to see how we could address their needs. Now, the retail sector covers a wide array of businesses. We have to know specifically the issues faced by different retail sectors before we can offer solutions. Now, there's mention of an aging population and the development of e-commerce, as Ms. Kong pointed out. Actually, under the Bureau, we have set up a task force on the development of e-commerce, and we'll see how it could help the retail sector as a whole. Because e-commerce, of course, is the global trend. In the mainland, is well developed. So in Hong Kong, how can we seize upon the opportunity to help the retail sector? This is an important subject we have to study. An aging population, of course, also has an impact on the retail sector. Again, under my bureau, we have set up a task force on economic development, and with a focus on an aging population and how it impacts economic development. So we'll see how we could help SMEs to seize upon the opportunities of an aging population for their development. Dr. Tan Yue-hong. Thank you, President. Secretary, in your main reply, you mentioned that the central government has recently enhanced the individual visit scheme. There are cities added from the northwestern region, such as Gansu, Qinghai, and so on, to the IVS. Now, these cities are very different than, say, the GBA cities. Visitors will stay overnight here. They won't leave Hong Kong the same day because it's a matter of necessity given the distance. Now, we don't have enough overnight visitors. Finally, these visitors are coming, so we prepared. Are there any measures so we can provide better services? And then overnight visitors will spend more in Hong Kong, and that will also promote the development of the retail sector. Secretary, thank you for the question about adding more cities to the individual visit scheme. There are various parties working hard to prepare for that. The Tourism Board and my bureau have had discussions on that. We've just launched the Good Hospitality campaign, and we want visitors to feel at home when they come and visit. Well, in fact, the tourism sector is providing quality service here in Hong Kong. For catering business or a hotel business, they of international standard. Now there are more cities added to IVS. That means there'll be many more overnight visitors. So the CSTB and other bodies will be properly prepared to cope with the new visitors. I will pass on your question to the Reference Bureau, and so they know that they need to be prepared for increasing number of overnight visitors coming to Hong Kong. Mr. Michael Tan. Well, there was a question last week on retail. I asked about multiple visits, multiple entry visits. Well, I blamed Mr. Kevin Yeung wrongly. Now, the travel industry council say there's no difference between multiple entry visas and so on. I must remind policy bureau secretaries to answer questions in a targeted manner. I've been asking about multiple entry visas, but have not heard anything yet. And another issue is the duty-free allowance. We've asked for the allowance to be raised for mainland visitors when they go home. Now it's $5,000, but if they only come once, they can't buy more than $5,000. It doesn't really help much, but that's why multiple entry visas would help. And if the duty-free allowance could be increased, say instead of just to $8,000, maybe to $30,000, it will be useful. Mr. Michael Tan, please come to your question. Please do not give your comments. So, Secretary, we are striving for the revival of the multiple entry visa arrangements for Shenzhen residents, and we're also trying to strive for an increase in the duty-free allowance for mainland visitors, so which has a better chance of materializing. Well, Mr. Tan, I think you're asking the wrong official about that because here we have the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development. Anyway, Secretary, do you wish to reply? President, I'll try to reply. On duty-free allowance for mainland visitors, it was mentioned by the Financial Secretary. And now the $5,000 duty-free allowance has been in place for a long time. The Reference Policy Bureau is in active discussion with the mainland authorities. Hopefully, we will hear some good news. Mr. Eunice Young. In April, the retail sales volume dropped by 14.7% month-on-month. For jewelry, that's a drop of 28%. Clothing, a drop of over 20%. So I wonder if the Bureau has actively approached reference retailers so that if, say, in the summer holidays, the sales volume could go up again. And have you tried to find out the reasons for the drop in the sales volume? Secretary. Yes, retail sales volume dropped in April. We did an analysis and we identified a number of factors. For example, in April, there was the Easter holiday, and of course that changed the consumption pattern, obviously. And then during Easter holidays, people went abroad. That affects their spending in Hong Kong, of course, before they went on their holiday. So in 2023, there was a resumption of normal travel. At the time, there was the distribution of consumption vouchers. That's why there was a vibrant retail market. So apart from the Chinese New Year's and Christmas, for 2023, the retail sales volume was higher than that in 2019. But if we compared it to 2023, for 2024, the figure is lower. And again, of course, in April, there's inclement weather, so it affects spending interest as well. Now, as I informed members just now, we're going to meet up with the retail trade association to find out about the difficulties the retail trade faces. And we'll see how we can cope with increase in visitors and how we could cope with the impact of the economy so that retailers could continue with their business. So we're going to do that. And then we'll also closely monitor the situation. And we'll see if we could be flexible in the various funds subsidies for the retail sector to help them ride out the storm. Mr. Carmen Can. In the main reply, the Bureau mentioned this digital transformation support pilot program is a one-to-one matching program to help SMEs in adopting technology. For example, the use of e-payment and e-ordering. Now, for this fund, this $500 million fund, what's the usage like? Is this program well received by the sector, and are there any challenges in rolling out this program? Secretary, yes, the digital transformation support pilot program is on one matching basis to help SMEs in retail and food and beverage industries in applying e-payment and other customer management and other digital solutions. This is to expedite digital transformation. We expect that there will be 8,000 eligible businesses that will benefit from the program. Now, at the end of 2023, we announced the application details. In the beginning of 2024, we invited the first batch of solution providers to upload their solutions. So far, about 190 solutions have been approved for uploading for purchase by SMEs. As at the end of March 2024, Cyberport received 360 applications for SMEs. 40 applications have been approved. The Cyberport will continue to invite applications from SMEs and solution providers, and they will also try to approve the various applications as soon as possible. Cyberport will also actively promote the pilot scheme to the sector. There are regular talks for SMEs and give them guidance on how to apply. And there's also professional digital transformation training so that there will be suitable, so SMEs know which are suitable solutions to adopt. Now, so far, Cyberport has approached 30 various trade associations to promote the scheme. Thank you.
Question 5, Mr. Tung-kwok. President, the government has introduced the Civil Service Public Housing Quota Scheme, the CSPHQ scheme, to provide junior civil servants and rank-and-file officers of the disciplined services with the opportunity to move into public rental housing, PRH, or purchase flats under subsidized sale flat schemes. It is learned that the CSPHQ scheme is severely oversubscribed, with the latest number of applicants for PRH special quota approximately 10 times the quota, and the waiting time even longer than the 5.7 years for PRH general applicants. On the other hand, retired rank-and-file officers of the disciplined services are unable to move out of their quarters in a timely manner because they have not been allocated a PRH flat, which has significantly lengthened the waiting time of existing staff for quarters. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Whether it has assessed the impact of sufficient quotas under the CSPHQ scheme, if so, of the conclusions, if not, the reason for that. 2. Whether it has estimated the numbers of applications for general quota and special quota to be received under the CSPHQ scheme and the successful rates of housing allocation in each of the coming 5 years, together with a breakdown by PRH and the home ownership scheme, HOS, and 3, whether it will consider afresh purchasing housing units in the mainland cities of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, which are in close proximity to Hong Kong for allocation to eligible civil servants so as to alleviate the problem of acute shortage of quota supply under the CSPHQ scheme. Thank you, President. Secretary for the Civil Service. President, The CSPHQ scheme is a discretionary housing benefit that is provided not according to the conditions of service. Both the original intent and purpose of the scheme are not to provide flats in a quantity equivalent to the demand. Eligible junior civil servants and rank-and-file officers of the disciplined services may apply for public rental housing PRH flats or green farm certificates GFCs applicable to purchase of flats under subsidized sale flat schemes. Such schemes under or include the Home Ownership Scheme, HOS, HOS Secondary Market Scheme, and Green Farm Subsidized HOS. Whether an eligible officer can be allocated a quota is mainly affected by the number of quota, the choice of estate or district, and the officer's relative priority among other applicants. The replies to the respective parts of the question are as follows. 1. For junior civil servants and rank-and-file officers of the disciplined services, apart from the CSPHQ scheme being provided on a discretionary basis, other discretionary housing benefits include the non-accountable cash allowance (NCA) for a maximum aggregate period of 120 months, which is subject to an annual quota of 1,800, and departmental quotas for the disciplined services. Take the cash allowance as an example. At present, eligible officers would be invited to submit applications within 1 year of attaining the eligibility, that is, officers on Master Pay Scale MPFs point 22 to 33 or equivalent within at least 3 years of continuous service, or officers below MPFs point 22 or equivalent with at least 20 years of a continuous service and would receive the allowance in the year following the application. Eligible officers may choose to submit applications under an appropriate housing benefit scheme according to their individual circumstances and need. The Civil Service Bureau has been maintaining communication with the Housing Department on the number of quota. After balancing various factors on top of the normal annual quota of 1,000 PRH flats and 500 GFCs, the Subsidized Housing Committee of the Hong Kong Housing Authority agreed to provide additional 250 GFC quota places annually for the 8 years from 2020-2021 to 2027-2028, making a total of 750 quota places each year. While the government understands it is the staff's hope to increase the quota under the scheme, the government must at the same time consider the keen demand for public housing from the public. Given the current tight supply of public housing, the government has to strike a balance between increasing quota places for civil servants and public demand. The second part to the question. Eligible civil servants may make reference to the annual circular memoranda issued by the government and apply for the CSPHQ. The eligibility criteria under this scheme include years of service, income and family composition, and so on. Officers who meet the basic eligibility criteria may choose the year for submitting application according to their individual circumstances, such as their length of service and their family members, or they have to undergo further verification of their eligibility. For example, compliance with the rules of prevention of double housing benefits and the requirements of the Housing Authority. As such, we are unable to provide the estimated number of applications and success rate for the next 5 years. For reference, in the past 5 years, from 2018-19 to 2022-23, in respect of the general quota that is applicable to junior civil servants, there were on average about 4,100 applications for PRH quota and about 2,800 applications for GFC quotas per year, and the percentage of applicants provided with the PRH quota and GFC quota was 16% and 21% respectively. As for the special quota that is applicable to rank-and-file officers of the disciplined services, there were on average about 3,900 applications for PRH quota and about 500 applications for GFC quota per year, and the average percentage of applicants provided with the PRH quota and GFC quotas was 9% and 63% respectively. 3. The proposal of purchasing housing units in the Greater Bay Area cities for allocating to eligible civil servants will bring enormous financial burden to the government. We have no plan to purchase housing units in the Greater Bay Area cities as housing benefits for civil servants. Thank you, President. Mr. Lai Tung-kwok. President, housing is in need of all civil servants, regardless of their rank. But for civil servants of NPS points above 34 or 33 is much better than their treatment to those under NPS point 33. Over the 5 years, the housing demand, 20% of housing demand has been met among civil servants. One of the goals of the government is to meet housing needs of the people, and the government said that they have identified land to build 410,000 units for PRH, and that exceed the estimated demand of 308,000 over the next 10 years. With the high wastage rate of civil servants and the increasing demand for housing from the public, the government should not just provide housing benefits on a discretionary basis. They should actively deal with the housing demand from the junior civil servants and rank and file officers of disciplined service. So will the Secretary be taking a step forward with the increase of supply of PRH units? Will the CSB plan to improve the discretionary housing benefits? Secretary, thank you. As for the supply of PRH units, we see that there will be an increase in the future. Currently, the waiting time for PRH units is still very long, and the government wants to shorten the waiting time for PRH units. We will keep a close eye on the waiting time for PRH units and its supply. As mentioned in my main reply, we maintain close liaison with the Housing Department. Where appropriate, we review the number of quotas to see if we can increase it or make relevant adjustments. But I have to stress that we have to at the same time consider the keen demand for public housing from the public while meeting the demand from civil servants. Mr. Rock Chen. President, the government plans in 2024 increase the GFC quotas for civil servants. But as we all know, in the coming 5 years, the government will be increasing the supply of PRH units. So for this 750 quotas for GFC, is there room for increase? Secretary. President, for this 750 quotas, that's not just for 2024-25. We will keep the level for the coming years. The GFC is for the purchase of different subsidized sale flats. And there is also great demand for such a GFC in the community. So same for PRH flats. We have to look at the supply of subsidized sale flat and the public demand, and we will review the quotas with the Housing Department to see if any adjustment can be made. Mr. Stanley Ng. President, the Secretary clearly said that they will not be purchasing housing units in the Greater Bay Area for allocating to eligible civil servants. Mr. Ng, would you clip your microphone onto your jacket? The Secretary said that the purchase of housing units will bring enormous financial burden, but that's not supported by evidence. The cost of PRH flats is about $700,000 to $800,000. With the same cost, Mr. Stanley Ng, this is not a debate. Would you just put your question? I'm about to ask my question. With the same cost, you can purchase a flat in the Greater Bay Area cities. Why don't the government consider such an option? Secretary. President, I think that the suggestion is to ask us to purchase housing units in the Greater Bay Area cities for eligible civil servants on top of supplying PRH flats. I think that would pose an additional financial burden to the government because we will not be lowering the supply of PRH flats, and purchasing housing units in the GBA cities will create an extra stream of expenditure for the government. Also, in terms of actual operation, PRH flats are for eligible civil servants. But if we purchase housing units in the GBA cities, civil servants will have to take a long time for them to reach their workplace, and they will have to travel for long distance. Mrs. Regina IP. Thank you, President. I'm disappointed by the third part of the Secretary's reply. The Secretary said that the purchase of housing units will bring enormous financial burden. It's quick and cheap for us to purchase housing units in the mainland, and the property prices of the GBA cities are going down, and it's faster and more cost-effective for us to purchase housing units in the Greater Bay Area instead of building PRH flats on our own. You should take into account the cost that can be saved instead of just looking at the additional financial burden. As for the travel time, there are a lot of civil servants actually working at a boundary control point, and a lot of government premises will be built in the North District. So if you say that is not convenient, I don't think it's reasonable. Secretary. The members proposes purchasing housing units in the GB cities for allocating to eligible civil servants. That may lower the demand for PRH flats among civil servants. That's true, but for this CSPHQ scheme, it's just a discretionary housing benefits. As I mentioned in my main reply, we're not targeting to provide flats in a quantity equivalent to the demand under the CSPHQ scheme. So the scheme will not affect the waiting time for PRH flats. If we are to spend financial resources on purchasing housing units on the Greater Bay Area cities, that would be a net expenditure of the government, and we have to carefully allocate our financial resources given the financial position of our government. In the Greater Bay Areas cities, the property near the boundary would be more expensive, so we have to take into account this point. For the units with low prices, they could be far away from the boundary, and that would be inconvenient for civil servants if they have to go to work. Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, President. I would like to follow up. Well, there are more and more people living in the Greater Bay Area cities, and we have this idea of 1 hour living circle. I think that the Secretary could conduct a survey among civil servants or talk to different bureaus and departments. They don't have to reject the proposal so fast. We encourage retirees to live on the mainland, and we have relevant policies to encourage Hong Kong people living in the north or living in the Greater Bay areas. I hope that the Secretary will consider this. Thank you. Secretary. President. Purchasing housing units would pose financial burden to the government. Given our existing financial position, we have to tread very carefully. We don't have such a plan currently. As to whether we will consider it in the future, we can review the overall housing benefits to the civil servants at appropriate juncture. Mr. Dennis Lang. Thank you, President. Mr. Lai Tung-kwok in his question asked about the moving out of rank and file officers of disciplined services from the quarters, and because these retiring rank and file officers have not been allocated a PRH flats, that is why some existing staff have not been allocated a quarters. So how can we better rationalize this arrangement? I think that the officers of discipline service should know when they're going to retire in advance. We have to ask the retired rank and file officers move out of their quarters and make sure that the existing staff can be allocated the PRH flats. Secretary for Security. Thank you, President. Rank and file officers 10 years prior to their retirement can start applying for PRH flats. The relevant rank and file officers have their own plan. I can give you some figures. Currently, retired rank and file officers of the disciplined services living in quarters awaiting allocation of PRH flat amount to 1,900. According to our past figures, these officers stay at quarters 2.8 years after retirement before they can be allocated PRH flats or subsidized self-flat. That accounts for about 7.9% of our quarters. As for the waiting time of quarters for rank and file officers of the disciplined services, they have to wait approximately 3.9 years before they will be allocated a quarter. So we see that the retired rank and file officers of occupying quarters have not affected the waiting time of existing staff for quarters. Next, Mr. Tung Kwok. Thank you, President. Junior civil servants and retired rank and file officers plan to retire in Foshan and Zhongshan all the time. So for the third question put by Mr. Tung-kwok, I think that we should consider it. Apart from allocating PRH flats, shouldn't we subsidize civil servants and rank and file officers of the disciplined service purchase flats on the Greater Bay Area so that retired officers will not be stuck in quarters and affect the existing staff waiting for quarters? Who will take the question? Secretary for the Civil Servants. In 1999 to 2000, we overhauled the civil servants' benefits. And it was agreed that we should align our benefits with that on the private market. And in 2000, 1st of June, for officers appointed thereafter, we will not be offering them non-departmental quarters, apart from those offered to the disciplined services. We will be instead offering them a non-accountable cash allowance. Such non-accountable cash allowance, to be eligible for that, we have cancelled with the double benefit requirements and the requirements that they have to reside at the housing unit. And this is more in line with the relevant benefits in the private market. Having done away with the living requirement and the rules of prevention of double housing benefits, we will not be creating these cooperative building societies again to provide quarters to civil servants that are not disciplined service staff. I want to stress this. For departmental quarters, PRH flats, GFC under CHPHQ scheme, these are for existing civil servants So for retired civil servants, if they want to move to the mainland cities, that's their own choice. But existing civil servants have to go to work, and we cannot ask them to move to mainland cities.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Mrs. Regina IP. Thank you, President. There are views that Hong Kong has the potential for developing island tourism with its outlying islands boasting beautiful natural scenery, rural landscape, numerous antiquities and monuments, as well as other traditional festive events. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that the government proposed in the policy address delivered last year to re-examine the planning of the ex-Lama Quarry site, with the relevant study to be completed within this year, of the current progress of the study and the expected time for publishing the finalized study report. 2. As it is learned that the development of outlying island tourism has been hindered due to rather backward infrastructure facilities, including piers, roads, and mobile communications facilities, as well as inadequate hotel accommodation facilities, whether the government has formulated measures and enhanced planning to speed up the improvement of supporting infrastructures and encourage investment in hotels and resorts, etc. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3, whether the government has formulated measures to step up publicity for island tourism, if so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And whether it will formulate such measures in the future. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. Thank you, President. Hong Kong is rich in natural tourism resources, with many outlying islands surrounded by azure and clear water, allowing water activities and island tours. Some islands locating in the northeast part of the new territories in Sai Kung have been designated as Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark. The government follows the principles of nature conservation and sustainable development when actively promoting green tourism. The Tourism Commission (TSE) has been implementing Yim Tin Tai Art Festival and Sai Kung Hoi Art Festival since 2019, featuring an integration of arts with the islands, including Yim Tin Tai, Sharp Island, Khao Sai Chau and Hai Island, allowing visitors to experience the natural landscape, history, culture, and heritage of Sai Kung Hoi, revitalizing the islands as well as the economic activities over there. The third edition of Sai Kung Hoi Art Festivals will be held at the end of this year. Hong Kong's outlying islands also have rich and vivid resources of the intangible cultural heritage, such as the Tai O Dragon Boat Water Parade, Chun Chou Chau Festival, and so on. We have been encouraging the trade to utilize these characteristics to develop more related itineraries and tourism products and continue to actively develop and promote island tourism, attracting locals and tourists to explore the scenery and culture of the outlying islands in Hong Kong. In consultation with the Development Bureau, AFCD, and OFCA, the reply as follows in respect of the question raised by Mrs. Regina IP. 1. The ex-Lama Quarry, comprising a 20-hectare platform area, a 5-hectare man-made lake, and 1 km shoreline, is now used by non-governmental organization under a short-term tenancy for non-profit-making environmental education and wildlife activity center. To make the best use and optimize the advantages of this site, the Development Bureau commenced a review in November last year. The study explores the optimization of the use of the beautiful environment and man-made lake of the site, nearby villages, hiking trail, seafood street, and water body of Sok Koo Wan, the development of the area for resort and outdoor recreational uses to enhance island tourism. Since such developments require the upgrading of the basic infrastructure facilities, we will explore the incorporation of accommodation facilities such as resort hotels, high-end camping facilities, and low-density residential use in order to enhance the commercial viability and market interest to participate in the development project. We'll make recommendations on the direction of development, including land use and development model within this year. Two, the government has been actively developing island tourism. TSE will play a coordinating role to facilitate private organizations or individuals to develop various tourism facilities such as accommodation and dining on outlying islands. Meanwhile, the TSE has been coordinating and promoting effective use of smart technology by individual bureaus and departments with a view to promoting smart tourism and formulating and implementing measures to enhance visitors' travel experiences. On telecommunications infrastructure facilities on outlying islands and remote areas, OFCA has been taking forward the subsidy scheme to extend fiber-based networks to villages in remote areas, and expediting the expansion of mobile network infrastructures in rural and remote areas through subsidies to enhance the overall coverage of mobile network facilities. The program now involves 23 piers, among which 1 has been completed, 10 are under construction and to be completed progressively from this year, and the remaining are in the planning and engineering design stages. The government has also been striving to enhance the public transport services for accessing green attractions, including strengthening the Kaito ferry services between Sai-kung and Kaosai Village High Island, and the new Kaito ferry services between Sha Tung-kwok, Ma Liu Shui, Tai Shui Hang, and Lai Chi Wo Ap Lei Chou Kat O. In recent years, the government has also improved hiking trails on various outlying islands, including Lantau Trail Section 2 Sharp Island Country Trail and the hiking trail in Nong Ping area. The improvement works on Lantau Trail Section 3 have also commenced. The Civil Engineering and Development Department CEDD proposes making the best use of the natural and historical and cultural resources in the South Lantau, including Changsha, Shui Hao, Shekpek, and Pui O, provide sustainable leisure and recreational facilities with different themes. Enhance the land and water transport amenities in South Lantau and provide accommodation facilities in Changsha and Pui O. The CEDD will explore various implementation approaches, including inviting private developers or investors to participate in the projects. The CEDD has commenced a 2-month public engagement on the 28th of May this year to collect views from the public. The government has actively promoted island tourism through different channels, introducing the distinctive characteristics of outlying islands to visitors. The TSE has launched the Cultural and Heritage Site Local Tour Incentive Scheme and the Characteristics Local Tourism Incentive Scheme to encourage the trade to develop more thematic in-depth tours and tourism products. Locations related to the outlying island tours include marine parks in Hoi Ha Wan and Tong Peng Chau, as well as the natural islands such as Sharp Island and Yim Tin Tai. The government provided financial support to the Travel Industry Council of Hong Kong to organize in 2023 the Deeper into Hong Kong Creative Itinerary Design Competition to encourage travel agents to design in-depth theme itineraries, including outlying island tour routes. We'll continue to encourage the trade to develop more thematic tourism products. Besides, through its year-round promotional platform, Hong Kong Great Outdoors, the Hong Kong Tourism Board promotes green tourism products under the themes such as hiking and island hopping. The AFCD has also set up various land and sea tour routes in visitor centers and promotes related attractions and transport information through social media, internet, and the Enjoy Hiking thematic website. We'll continue to promote the development of island tourism and make the best use of valuable blue and green resources in Hong Kong, thereby implementing the concept of tourism is everywhere. Thank you, President. Mrs. Regina IP. Lantau Island is the largest outlying island in Hong Kong. It's rich in natural resources. It has great potential for tourism development. But a problem remains. That is, the accommodation facilities for visitors are lacking. Recently, the development has issued a document in relation to South Lantau. There's the longest beach, but there lacks any accommodation facility. 4 in Tai Mei Tok, 3 in Changsha. The occupancy rate is quite good at 70 to 80%. Will you consider redeveloping these bungalows or resort houses in order to enhance the appeal of the outlying islands in Hong Kong? Thank you, Mrs. Regina IP, for your recommendations. And the suggestion on South Lantau Recreation Corridor. In South Lantau Eco-Recreational Corridor, we have a lot of different facilities such as glamping site in Pui O. In Changsha, there will also be high-quality glamping sites and accommodation facilities. There are also camper vans and resort houses. So in the development of South Lantau eco-recreational facilities, we will factor in the facilities in order to enhance the traveling experience of visitors. Ms. Chen Yut-ming. Thank you, President. First of all, I thank the Secretary for his reply. The Secretary mentions that the government is preparing to enhance the fiber-based networks to villages in remote areas. I look forward to the concrete plans. The Northern Metropolis, that is the blue and green tourism circle, is rich in natural resources. I'd like to know the progress of the Sai Kung and Lantau areas. Can you introduce the blue and green ecotourism circle to us? Will you also let us know the development plan regarding the blue and green tourism circle? We make good use of Shuttlecock country parks as well as Shuttlecock market such as Ap Chow, Kat O, these outlying islands. On the one hand, we have already rolled out the second phase of Shuttlecock such as Chongying Street to allow visitors to have a good experience in these areas. I understand the Tourism Commission has organized tours and arranged for water transport to these areas. We are already improving the pier works. In Lai Chi Wo and Ap Chow, we are already implementing these pier improvement works, and these are exactly the works we have been working on. Mr. Lok Chung Hong. Thank you, President. Smaller outlying islands also have their own characteristics. Just as Dong Peng Chau, we have different kinds of rocks. For example, shales are rich in characteristics. We have the lighthouse as well. However, we lack electricity. This is a main deficiency. The CLP said that they would look into power supply, but the plan came to nothing in the end. I'd like to ask the CSTB whether you have worked with the EEB to have a power line from the mainland directly to Tung Peng Chau for power supply. If the CLP is charging a high cost, you can seek power supply from other electricity companies. For example, you can provide power from wind turbines at a lower cost. Have you worked with the EEB to solve the problem of power supply in outlying islands? Thank you, President. Of course, from the perspective of tourism, we need to give full play to the characteristics of different outlying islands in Hong Kong. We need to factor in their mode of operation as well. For example, in some outlying islands, when you take a walk for half a day in the outlying islands and then you hop on the ferry once again, you can also revel in the characteristics of the outlying islands. Member mentioned accommodation facilities, F&B facilities, and so on. In our study, it's actually difficult to provide power supply in all outlying islands. Tourism takes a form of different modes. It's not necessary to have a restaurant in outlying islands. You can also bring your own food to these outlying islands. In the development of island tourism, some islands have the possibility to develop themselves into an accommodation facility. So we'll see how we can work on the infrastructure front. In relation to power supply, we can discuss with the EEB. We can also discuss with power companies. But first of all, we need to develop the tourism perspective first. From the perspective of livelihood, whether power supply is required in outlying islands, that's a separate matter. But in relation to what can be done in the outlying islands, do we need accommodation and F&B facilities? We need to take a step-by-step approach. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, President. We all have different interests. It's difficult to have one single island to cater for the interest of all tourists. There are vineyard hopping tours. Visitors can go to different bars until they find one that they like. So can we make good use of the good number of islands we have in Hong Kong so that we can have island hopping, say Tai O, Mui Wo? We can build a network of outlying islands. We can also enhance the relevant facilities so that after visitors hike in Mui Wo, they can go to appreciate different arts and buy dried seafood products in Tai O. They can feel the experience of a fishing village in Tai O. So we can meet the different expectations of visitors. I thank the member for your suggestion. Just now, member also mentioned outlying islands have their own characteristics. The characteristics vary from one island to another. Some visitors may be partial to one single island and they may revisit the island once again in the future. So how can we better improve the transport network? We do need to address this problem. Take Lanta as an example, or even Cheung Chau, Ping Chau. Transport infrastructures are already there. For more remote areas where transport is not that convenient, probably there is just one or two Kaito ferry services going to different outlying islands. But we have quite a lot of outlying islands in Hong Kong. They are rich in their own characteristics. So we need to have a better plan in relation to itinerary design. We have been working with travel agents to design different itineraries. We make good use of our existing resources to see how we can showcase the characteristics of different outlying islands. But we'll definitely consider what members have suggested. We will also try to enhance the appeal and characteristics of different outlying islands. Mr. Kwok Wai-kang. Thank you, President. I met with the Rural Committee of South Lantau. They said that they expressed support for developing the South Lantau Eco-Recreational Corridor. But there was lack of communication. The government would like to enhance accommodation facilities and F&B facilities. They expressed great support. However, the government said that they would invite the participation of private organizations, but the Rural Committee thinks that we can invite participation of residents in the locality to take part in the projects as well. Actually, the eco-recreational corridor impacts on residents the most, so they should be given the priority to express their feedback. The Secretary for Development. Thank you, President. In our development and planning of the South Lantau Eco-Recreational Corridor, we have been maintaining a close dialogue with residents. We started a public consultation exercise with the residents on the 28th of May. We'll continue to discuss with them. In developing the South Lantau Eco-Recreational Corridor, how can we benefit villagers as well? This is also a factor at play. We will look into the methods. Villagers or residents are operating campsite facilities or F&B facilities in the area. After the enhanced facilities in the future with greater footfall, residents and villagers will also benefit from the government's efforts. Mr. Chen Hok-fung. Thank you, President. We need to have residents participate in these projects. Villagers or residents have their own land, but there are limitations to the development of these pieces of land. Land leases have imposed restrictions, so what kind of measures or policies does the administration have so that they will be more eager to take part in tourism development? Thank you, President. We provide convenience and facilitating measures. For example, camper vans are provided by villagers. The Sustainable Lantau Office provides land exemption applications. We have helped 3 operators obtain exemptions. We'll continue to liaise with villagers and residents to see how we can build the South Lantau Eco-Recreational Corridor. Thank you.
Government's Bill, first reading. Shipping Legislation, Electronic Certificates and Electronic Documents Amendments Bill 2024.